Well, good morning and welcome to our combined Sunday school. We're so glad that you're here. Would you stand with me as we begin by singing this song, Complete in Thee? Let's stand and sing out to the Lord, Complete in Thee. Complete in Thee, no work of mine may take, dear Lord, the place of Thine. Thy blood hath pardon bought for me, and I am now complete in Thee. Yea, justified, O blessed thought, and sanctified, salvation wrought. Thy blood hath pardon bought for me, and glorified I too shall be. Complete in Thee, each want supplied, and no good thing to me denied. Since Thou my portion, Lord, wilt be, I ask no more, complete in Thee. Yea, justified, O blessed thought, and sanctified, salvation wrought. Thy blood hath pardon bought for me, and glorified I too shall be. Would you take a moment to welcome one another here to Faith Baptist Church? As you make your way back to your seats, let's continue by singing the third verse, Complete in Thee, each want supplied. No more grace shall sin. Complete in Thee, no more shall sin. Thy grace hath conquered, reigned within. Thy voice shall bid the tempter flee, and I shall stand complete in Thee. Yea, justified, O blessed thought, and sanctified, salvation wrought. Thy blood hath pardon bought for me, and glorified I too shall be. Dear Savior, when before Thy bar all tribes and tongues assembled are, among Thy chosen will I be, at Thy right hand, complete in Thee. Yea, justified, O blessed thought, and sanctified, salvation wrought. Thy blood hath pardon bought for me, and glorified I too shall be. You may be seated.
I'm glad to see everybody here this morning, and we're thankful to have a combined class this morning. I'm glad for all of our young people with us, 3rd through 6th grade being with us this morning, and also our student ministry. And we do this every time we have one of our missionary guests with us because we want to make sure we take time as a church family to not only value our missionaries and be thoughtful and thankful for them, but also for the younger church to start recognizing your part in global evangelism. It's not just that you should tell people around here about Christ, and you should and you can, but that you can be involved with giving some of God's money He's given you back to being a part of sending the gospel all around the world. And so we're always thankful anytime we have missionaries in. We want to have that opportunity to talk with them. And so we have the Ottersons with us, or Ann Otterson with us. Ann Otterson, his family came down ill yesterday, and so we regret not being able to be with us. But we're thankful to have them. They've been in France for over 15 years, and we've been able to partner with them. So how many years, Brother Otterson? About a decade or so?
So, yeah.
There it is. So we're thankful for that. What I'm going to do is have Brother Otterson come and give a word about the ministry there, what's taking place. We're going to show a video. Then afterwards, we'll have time for question and answer. So I encourage everybody, be thoughtful about what you would like to ask about what it's like ministering there, living there, questions you have about the gospel's influence or one of the impediments to the gospel, whatever it might be. And so I'm going to have Brother Lance come and give a word, and then we'll have a video and go from there.
Thank you, Pastor. It is a pleasure to be here with you folks. It was good to see Brother Favor earlier. Always good to be with a church that's supported us for so long. We were here on deputation in 2002. This church has supported us since 2002. For you math whizzes, I'll let you do the math, but it's been a little while, and I met somebody earlier who remembered what we looked like, or at least what our prayer card looked like back then. We were a cartoon couple. My wife often was accused, or at least confused. They would try and point her towards the youth group because she looked like a teenager. I still had my hair and all the answers, and something's happened since then. I'm not sure. Actually, I do know what's happened. Kids and ministry. Should I say accused? No, I've not been accused. It's been said to me that your pastor and I actually look like brothers, maybe cousins, so I'm going to take that as a compliment. Amen? Amen. So I'm representing the Otterson family. Please pick up a prayer card. As you heard, our littlest one, Kane, came down with the stomach flu yesterday, began to throw up all over the place, so we decided it best that Amy stay in Michigan with the kids. So I want to say we were here in 2007 as well. I'm not sure. I think we were. But our family, there's Amy and I, and then Kiriana will be 14 in just not even 2 weeks. Aaliyah is 11 and a half. She's 11 and a half, going on 14 as well. Some of you know what that's like. Cannon is 7 and a half. He's our cannonball. And Kane, of course, is 2 and a half. So that's our family, the Ottersons in France. So when you've been in France over 15 years, lots to talk about. We were there for our first 4-year term. We just spent working with a veteran missionary family, learning the culture, learning the language. We did a year-long furlough in 2007, and when we went back in 2008, it was to start a church in the eastern edge of the suburbs of Paris, in the communities around Disneyland Paris. Back then it was called Euro Disney, now it's Disneyland Paris. It was the fastest growing community in the whole country. We were there for almost 4 years, got a church plant going, and then the Lord moved us to the southeast edge of the suburbs where we are now, to what I call a replant. It was a church that was struggling, about to close its doors, had been without a pastor for quite a while. And so the Lord led us there. We've been there for now 7 years, trying to get that thing going and really thriving. Pastor Favor asked, or Brother Favor asked earlier, how's it going? I said, you know how it is in ministry, there's ups and downs. But we've seen some amazing victories. We've experienced some heartbreaks, just the way the ministry goes all around the world. I guess after you've been a missionary for long enough, you can kind of bend some of the rules. Our video is a little bit different. Instead of a video that tells you where we're at, what we're doing, the part of the country we're in, we decided that we wanted to let you hear from our church people about missions. So if you don't mind, if we could cue the video, we'll let you hear for just a few minutes what missions means to some of the people in our church. Thank you.
These are some pretty important questions. Hi, I'm Amy Otterson.
Hi, I'm Lance Otterson. We've been missionaries to France since the year 2000. We would love to share with you some answers on the subject of missions from our own church people.
Oui, surtout si on donne avec foi et avec amour, ça peut contribuer à quelque chose de beaucoup plus grand.
Je crois que le passage biblique que tout le monde connaît, qui façonne et qui nous formate, hein, qui nous touche profondément dans la mission, c'est Romains chapitre 10, le verset 13, qui dit que quiconque invoquera le nom du Seigneur sera sauvé. Mais le passage qui suit, le 14 jusqu'au 16, montre vraiment le problème de la mission, c'est comment croiront-ils s'il n'y a personne pour annoncer ? Et comment annonceront-ils s'il n'y a personne pour les envoyer? Et comment seront-ils envoyés si nous, on n'est pas touchés pour aider et soutenir la mission?
Je donne par la foi et je sais que mon Seigneur veut que nous vivions par la foi. Des hommes et des femmes qui répondent à l'appel de Dieu dans le cadre de la mission. Je suis heureuse de donner cet argent pour que des Bibles soient données à des personnes où je ne peux pas aller les porter. Aussi que ces personnes soient enseignées par la parole de Dieu, apprennent de Dieu par ce don.
La mission vaut pour moi plus que toute chose au monde. Parce que sans la mission, la bonne parole de Jésus-Christ le Rédempteur ne se serait pas perpétuée jusqu'au jour d'aujourd'hui. Moi-même, je suis un témoignage vivant de la mission. La mission revêt une importance capitale. Sans la mission, eh bien, la parole s'éteindrait. La parole ne serait pas connue au loin, mais par la grâce de la mission, même ceux qui ne pouvaient pas l'entendre, l'entendent aujourd'hui.
Les missionnaires, ils nous apportent la bonne nouvelle et c'est la nouvelle la plus importante qu'on a besoin de savoir ici sur Terre.
Pour moi, c'est plus qu'un acte d'obéissance à la Grande Commission dans Matthieu 28. Pour moi, c'est vraiment un acte d'amour. Un acte d'amour pour notre Seigneur, pour montrer combien c'est important pour nous ce qu'il a fait, mais aussi un acte d'amour envers les autres parce qu'on veut partager cette nouvelle avec un maximum de gens pour qu'ils aient aussi cette joie de connaître l'amour de Dieu pour nous.
There were a lot of good answers there, but I hope you appreciated that last one. Isabel says, sure, I do it out of obedience. The Great Commission says, go, so I get that part. But she says, I do it beyond. The next step is out of love. Love for those people, love for God, but also I want the people that are going to receive the good news of missions to be able to experience God's love. So a lot of good answers, but that one always gets me because she gets it. She is a result of missions. She does it out of obedience, but she also gives and prays out of love for God and love for those who need to hear the good news. Also, before we get into questions, you may have noticed our church, that's just a sampling of our church, but our church is about 2/3 black. Within that, you've got about half of that are folks whose roots come from the Caribbean, Guadeloupe, Martinique, and then the other half of those 2/3 are from Africa. And so France used to be a colonial superpower, and 1/3 of Africa was at one time under French rule. And so much of Western Africa they have their independence now, but they are French speaking, and those folks can come, usually can come and live in France. They're seen as citizens. And so that's kind of the makeup, and that's pretty typical of churches within the big cities in the Paris area. Evangelical churches are usually probably 2/3 black, and then the rest is a mixture of French and other. So, which to me is a pretty good look at missions. It's an international. The gospel knows no racial, cultural bounds, and so that's to me a pretty good, healthy look at the Great Commission and missions in action, whether it be in Paris or other parts of the world. So, I think we're ready. If Pastor, you want to come and
we have some young men with some microphones up and ready. We're about to. So, while they get those microphones ready, be thoughtful about maybe what you want to ask, Brother Otterson. And maybe I could begin here, and we'll kind of kick it off that way. Help us. We know, obviously, the gospel message. We understand what it is. We understand every individual has a stumbling block or a struggle towards receiving it as a sinner, but then also there's cultural backgrounds, etc. Help us understand what's the biggest impediment you've discovered or seen, if there is just one. Give us the big impediment that you find in France repeatedly.
I would give two right away. The first one is most French. It's easy to think that France is a Catholic country. It's really not. Most Catholics are Catholic in name only. They're non-practicing. So most French are either atheist, there is no God, God doesn't exist, or they're agnostic. I'm not sure if he exists. Well, or this, I'm not sure if he or she exists. That's kind of what they like to say, but they don't care. So when you are starting from ground point zero, there may or may not be a God. You've got some ground to make up with that kind of person. The second major obstacle, France, they work a lot during Monday through Friday, and then most all have the weekend off. So Saturday is errand day. Go to the grocery store, clean the house, mow the lawn, get all that stuff out of the way. And then Sunday is for me. It's my day. It's for my hobby. It's for whatever sport, whatever activity I like to participate in. So Sunday is, in the French culture, it's almost a selfish way of looking at it, but that's the way it is. Sunday is my day to take it easy, do what I want to do. So the notion of going to church, you invite somebody to go to church on a Sunday morning, it's like, why? What? I know. It's so foreign, the notion of going when Sunday is my activity day and then a big meal with family. So the notion of coming to church, for a while there we had a lady coming off and on who was approaching the gospel, interested in, she outright said, if you only had church at a different time, I'd be here more often. And a lot of missionaries are coming to the field playing with that idea. What about a Saturday night church, Sunday? Our church plant out by Disney, it was a Sunday afternoon. So there's some flexibility there. The gospel allows for that, but that's a huge obstacle when in your culture Sunday is for you to do what you want to do, and going to church, of course, is far down the list.
You bring that up, and then maybe a piggyback question be, obviously we understand the churches do a symbol, and there's no moratorium about when, where, how in the scripture. So help us, as we're in the Midwest in America, and we're used to church a particular way because of culture here. What's church like there in France? How's it structured? How's it take place? How do you all do your missions? I mean, just at large, what's church like there?
The church that we're at now was actually started 30 years ago by a Baptist Bible Fellowship missionary. Back then, they didn't tell the missionaries to learn the culture and then adapt to the culture. They just said, go do what we do here. And so our church, when he started it, he formatted it this way. So we have a 10 o'clock Sunday school, 11 o'clock main service, which is fine, it works for us. And I actually prefer that because that 10 o'clock hour is a great time for Bible study, really. And then we have different Sunday school classes for age groups. So we have smaller kids and then the next group up, and then I'm actually the youth pastor for kids. And then the adults meet together at 10 o'clock, and then we all meet together at 11, much like you do. There is a junior church. We have a Tuesday night Bible study, Tuesday night prayer meeting, which is a great time of prayer and fellowship, and we have a little Bible study. We have, when I first ended up at the church, when they called me as pastor, there were about 12 adults attending. It really dwindled down to that, and the church supported between 15 and 18 missionaries. A large chunk of those missionaries, they couldn't tell you much about them. The letters were old, and I said, folks, we're supporting more missionaries than we have adults attending. We've got to make some difficult changes here. So now we support 6 missionaries, or projects. We support Manna. So, I mean, but we do that, that's above and beyond what they give to tithe, and so but our church loves missions. I think you could see that because they are the fruit of missions. So let's see, what else did you ask me? Yeah. So we have our town. When we got there, it was about 10,000. It is growing towards 17, 18, but because of urban sprawl, you can't tell where one town ends and the next one begins. So we're in a community of about 110,000 people within just about a 10-mile radius. And so in that radius, there's only about 2 evangelical churches that are somewhat reliable. I would send people to the one that's closest to us. I'm not sure I would send them to the other one, but they're the most reliable. After that, you've got a lot of Pentecostal groups. There's an African church that meets just about 400 or 500 yards from our house on the edge of town. But it's very African, very Pentecostal, so we hear them every Sunday afternoon, bellering real loud. So a little bit of everything. We're about 300 yards from the Catholic Church. For our special Christmas, it was 2 weeks before Christmas, we had our special Christmas event. In the afternoon. We changed it to the afternoon so that more people could come. In the morning, we came to rehearse, so the kids could rehearse, go through one more time the play and the music. And we decided we were going to go caroling, so we went caroling. We went around the corner to where there's a supermarket. There are very few people there. We decided then to go down by the city hall, and we didn't do this on purpose, but it worked out really well. Catholic Church started to let out, and here we are singing carols just across the street from them. They kind of looked at us like, oh, that's sweet, and a few of them came to join us. The Padre didn't, but that's okay. But quite a few of them came and joined us, and it was a sweet time of singing Christmas carols, and helped just be a blessing to our community. So,
all right. If you have a question, put your hand up. They got those microphones. We'll get those to you. Young or old alike. Right there, Pastor David.
I know in the last decade there's been a large surge of Muslim immigration to Europe. Over your years of being in France, have you seen a increase in that in your community? And then also, if you've had interaction with Muslims, how have you been able to interact towards the gospel with them?
I have. Pastor asked me this yesterday, and that was what's changed the most in your years there, and that was my first answer was it sure seems to me like there's a lot more Muslims than there used to be. Where we live, our neighborhood, there's a large contingency of Turkish Muslims. They're a very close-knit community. It's hard to, and usually the men work, you don't see them all day, and the women all congregate together, and it's close-knit. It's hard to get 2 words out of him, but we try. But yeah, no, there's a very large Muslim community in our town, really in every town, and there just seems to be more and more than you used to see. This is kind of ironic. It works for us. We rent our building from the city. The Muslims rent their building from the city, and our doors are next to each other. So we're neighbors. We share a wall. Maybe not once a month, every 6 weeks, one of them will open the wrong door and walk up the stairs, and then they'll look around with this really sheepish look on their face. We tell them they're welcome to stay, but they never do, and they go back to next door. That has actually caused some confusion in our town because everyone knows where the Muslims are, and our signs are next to each other. Their sign is bigger. Because everyone knows who they are, they actually don't bother to look at our sign. They just figure it's all the same. And so I joke that I'm the pastor of the Invisible Baptist Church of our town. But when we tell people where we are, oh, right, okay, yeah, I know where you are. So, but we have a good relationship because we're always crossing paths at the doors. Our across-the-street neighbors are Muslim. For the first 6 weeks we're gone, they're taking care of our dog, which is an act of love because dogs are not considered a clean animal in the Muslim faith. So my good friend Mohammed is serving his neighbor in an act of love to feed the dog while we're gone. They're a sweet family. We've witnessed to them before. They come to, and this is one of the things that we do that we found very helpful, to have special occasion outreaches. And the biggest thing we do every year is we have a Thanksgiving meal, a full meal. We invite our people to invite non-church folk to come. They've all seen it on TV. American television is popular there, so they've all seen Thanksgiving. They may not know what it's about, so they're very curious. So we have a meal. We explain the history as well as the Christian spiritual origins of Thanksgiving. We have games, trivia, different things, and then I always bring a short Bible study on Thanksgiving, being thankful, because you can't be thankful if you don't have someone to be thankful to. And so that's always a huge outreach, and so our neighbors, Muslim neighbors, come. They love it. They come every year. We didn't do it last year, and they were crushed. So, but yeah, when it comes to those that we meet them in front of the door, of course, they're very, very loyal and faithful, and the men usually have the robes and the big beards, and so it's a little harder to talk about Jesus Christ, the Son of God, instead of the prophet right there at the front door, but it's really in the interactions the rest of the week is where we've been able to talk about the Bible and about Jesus, and anytime I can. And we have kids that our front yard neighbors, they have kids that are in school with ours, and so often I'll end up walking with either him or her, and anytime I can, I talk about Jesus.
Next question, Brother Chris.
Yeah, with your focus on missions, have you all been able to take trips outside of the country or even within France to do missions trips with your church?
We haven't, no. Our church, it's a very blue-collar, not a lot of extra money flowing in our folks' accounts, so it's difficult to just organize that kind of a trip up and go somewhere. And then, of course, they work. It seems like most of the women in our church are either nurses aides, work in hospitals, and so they work some crazy hours. And then most of the women in our church work every other Sunday, and so it's kind of hard to organize that kind of thing with everybody. And then the other thing too, in the French culture, and you may have heard this, half of the country gets the month of July off. The other half of the country gets the month of August off. They will go. They leave. They're gone. And so any momentum you have in the spring, you'll just kiss that goodbye and hope to pick up again in the fall, because half your church is gone in July, half is gone in August. So doing that kind of thing in the summer is not real viable. And then the rest of the year, of course, you got to. So we've actually never done it. Not to say we couldn't, but no, it's not something that we've been able to do. Now that does help. This is a summer furlough. It's basically June through August that we're back in the States. It's hard to take the kids out of school during the school, so that's why we do it this way. But on the other hand, that kind of helps that half our church will be gone in July, half in August. So things kind of really slow down to a crawl. So that
Culturally, it's just summertime is just done.
a lot of churches close their doors in the summer. Yeah, so it's see you back at the end of August. So kind of weird, but.
Look, Keith.
You mentioned that a lot of your women work in like nurses or nurses' aides. How about your fellas? I mean, how's your division between men and women in the church, and how's your male leadership in the church?
Are you talking about the ratio? How many men do we have, or are we?
Yeah, men to women, and then are your men participative? Do they lead their families?
We have a few more women, in that a lot of them are divorced, and that is, these women are godly. They love God, love Jesus. At some point their husbands were bums and cheated on them and left them, and that's one of the ladies in our church. Her husband. He left her. He was an alcoholic. He fell off a boat. He was actually back home in Guadeloupe, fell off a boat, disappeared. They declared him dead because they didn't find the body. They found his body 4 months later, and he had drowned. Her family blamed. Anyways, that's just to tell you a little bit about the atmosphere. We have a lot of women who, again, they love Jesus, but their husbands didn't. And the men that we have some married couples, some good families. I've done in my ministry, I've done 3 weddings, but the last 2 were there in French. That's always fun and interesting. My first wedding was actually in Texas in 2007. So in English, of course, not in Texan. Leadership in our church is very, very strong, very good. You would have seen Antoine, the bald black man, and Xavier, the man with the salt and pepper hair. They are teaching the adult Sunday school class and preaching while I'm gone, and both of them are good teachers and accomplished preachers. So the church is in very good hands. Even when we're gone, I'm not worried about. And they're good, strong Bible believers, know what they're doing, and they've actually had some Bible Institute training. So for a smaller church, we're very, very blessed by the level of the teaching and understanding of the Bible that we have in our church.
Could I piggyback to ask a question? Sometimes cultures, depending on where they're at, are either more matriarchal or whatnot. Kind of along the line of Keith's question, what are the men in France like? Are there big impediments to the gospel with them? Are there big impediments with helping them grow in their spiritual opportunities as a husband, as a father, as a leader in the church? Do you find culturally there's a lot of barriers to that, or is it pretty normal in their culture already? It's
fairly normal in a Western culture. What you do have to be sensitive to or understand too, though, is that some of these guys are African, or their background is. So they may have a different outlook on some things, but it's pretty Western. It's I would say a lot like the States.
Sure. I was just curious. I know sometimes
it's less matriarchal than some cultures.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's even like grandma or grandfather kind of. So I was curious. So, other questions you have?
Some over here.
I just want to grab Ted there.
Oh. Is there any Christian radio stations there, or do they allow such a thing? Or
there aren't any like on the FM, AM, but we now have the availability to get some things on the web, some streaming, some Christian music, but that's one area where we are way lagging behind other parts of the world, and not just with radio, but I also mean like stuff in print. Things that are translated. You could get a lot of stuff in Spanish now. Just go and find it on the web. That's not the case in French. There's a lot of cool graphics that are translated. You can use in your sermons and stuff, but not in French. So that's just the way it is. So we're a lot farther behind than I would like to see in music and translation and literature. Now you can get a lot of stuff now in some of the bigger authors are translated into French, and that's nice. but not as much as we'd like.
Did I hear you say, translator, in that answer? Because I was wondering how the language curve has been for you guys over the years, because I remember when you were first here, when you guys said you were going to France, it's like your wife, she looked a little sheepish about the idea, but you were on fire for it in a real way.
Well, it's funny you asked that, because we went to the Sorbonne University. It's one of the oldest universities in the world. They have a track for foreigners to learn French. Amy had 3 years in high school, so when we arrived, she had a little bit of a foundation. When we arrived, it was funny. When we arrived, we took a placement test, so they know where to put you. And so the day of the test, we sat down, and I knew enough to put my name and my address, and that was it. I put the pen down, the pencil down. And then there was a kid from North Korea to my left. He didn't get that far. And then about halfway through, we're just sitting there twiddling our thumbs, and he looks over at Amy, who's just working hard, and he looks at me and he goes, I'm like, I know, man. So this lady, of course, came along and took us, the two of us, out, because we're done, obviously. And she sits down and she asked me a question in French, and I just looked at her. And she asked me, I assume, the next question, or the same question in French, and I just looked at her, and then she said in English, I'm testing you. And I said in English, I know. You know where to put me, in the basement. So, and I ended up next to the North Korean kid in the basement. So we, at the end of the semester, all right, imagine a pitcher of water here. No, a cup of water, and then there's a big pitcher. Every day the teacher, that first semester was 6 hours a day. We'd get a lunch break. But the amount of French would be like taking a whole pitcher and pouring it into a cup. What happens? It can't keep it all in. Well, that was my brain. After about 2 months, I was so lost, and I couldn't keep up. And I was discouraged and depressed. And when it was time for the final exam, I took it. I wasn't sure how I did. I felt okay. Maybe I passed. Now, Amy got put in the highest level of beginners, okay? Because there was about 4 or 5 levels. Of course, you know where they put me. But we took the same exam. That wasn't fair. A few weeks later, we got 2 big envelopes in the mail from the school. And I'm like, I ain't touching that. Amy, you open yours. So she opened hers, and it gave her score, and she aced it. She did really, really well. She passed it with flying colors. I'm like, well, I got the same envelope. So I tore into mine, I pulled it out, and she had a certificate of completion. I'm hearing some uh-ohs, Pastor. I had a certificate of participation. Thank you for holding a chair down and keeping it warm. Your money's good with us anytime. So I was depressed, discouraged. We went to youth camp that summer, and that was the best thing for me. Youth camp there is different than here. It was 3 straight weeks, the same group of kids without a break. They were shorthanded. This is funny, I just failed my final exam. I was the only counselor for 12 high school boys for 3 straight weeks. But halfway through camp, something clicked. I needed to be held under. I needed to be baptized, basically. And somewhere in that first week or two, something clicked in my head, and I went from understanding 30% to about 60, 70. And from then on, things got a lot better. When I went back and took my second placement test, I tested into the intermediate, into the level. And so I was then encouraged. So I went 3 semesters. Amy only went 2 because by that point she was doing well, and then she was pregnant with our first. So I went 3 semesters. I did one semester of every level, beginner, medium, and advanced. One more story, and then I'll move on. First day of the advanced level, the teacher, real old school, kind of a tough guy, he called us all by our last name. He says, all right, you all have supposedly tested into my class, the superior level. I have my doubts. We're going to do a dictée, which is where basically he reads something and you have to write it all down, which sounds easy in English, but it's hard in French with all the accents and all that stuff. So I know where you all are at. Okay, so we take the dictée. He takes it home. The next day he goes, what a disaster. That was awful. Mr. Otterson, where are you? Congratulations, you got the best score. 4 out of 20. Yes! 4 is terrible out of 20, but I got the best score. He actually graded in the negative, so there were those with minus 16, minus 17. So I was a god, little g. In that class, they just looked at me with big, he got a 4. It took us about 2 years to feel comfortable. About 4 years where we considered to be maybe fluent or very, very comfortable. We'd be considered fluent. I mean, there's a couple areas where I got to slow down and think about it. And then, of course, vocabulary. There's always vocabulary that you won't know because it's so specific. And if you're not introduced, for example, when Amy got pregnant, I learned a whole bunch of pregnancy vocabulary or hospital vocabulary. You know, there's just things like that you don't, until you're in it, you won't know it, for example. To this day, I couldn't tell you what certain little gizmos are in the car, you know, because, you know, you just don't, or little gizmos in a fridge, or, you know, I mean, there's little words that we know that you don't know until you have to learn it. So anyways, I'm taking up too much time talking about language. Okay. There was a second one over here, or another?
Okay, Fred, and then somebody get back there to Brother John, if you would.
I was just wondering, how close are you to Belgium, and is there any interaction between your group and people there, and is there that much of a difference in the language with what they speak in Belgium? I think it's a fractured French, I'm not sure, from what I recall out of the past.
Belgium is a funny country because it's very small, but they speak 2 languages, French and Welsh. Or it's kind of a Welsh. Anyways, we have some good missionary friends that are there. We interact somewhat with them, but not a whole lot. Actually, I've got 2 missionary friends that are there. But we don't interact across borders much. Used to more. There used to be a little more interaction. There used to be a campsite available to Western European missionaries. We've lost that. So having lost that common area to a chateau to meet at, we've kind of lost some of that fellowship that we used to, some summer camps. So not as much as there used to be.
We have tracts here. Do you use those around your church?
We do, and we can. In France, you're allowed to stuff mailboxes with stuff, and so from time to time we will do a blitz, and whether it's an invitation to a function or tracts. Of course, it's handy to have them around. So it's something we do have. It just kind of depends on the scheduling, timing, what's happening in the church. But yes, yeah, we do.
Just one last one. Ms. Sonda? Oh, sorry, Ms. Rhonda.
Yes, did the placement testing that you went through include obtaining your driver's license, or is that another procedure?
When we went to France, we had Michigan driver's license. France has an agreement with certain American states. They will just trade them out. And basically that is, if the state allows the French one, then they allow, it's kind of quid pro quo, you scratch mine, I'll scratch yours. Which was very, very fortunate because to earn your French license is very difficult. It's a racket. It's kind of like going to flight school. You have to have a bunch of hours with an instructor. The written test is very hard. The driving test is very hard to get. Most people flunk the first time. So praise God we got to skip around that ordeal.
I appreciate the questions. I know no doubt there are many more. What I want to encourage you to do, Brother Otterson will be at his table, not only between now and the next service, but then afterwards as well. Get by, ask what questions you have, see how you can be a help to him, how you can pray for their family. And so we want to say thank you to them for being with us. And so I want to encourage you, get by the table, let them know you appreciate them, you love them, you're praying for them. Thanks, Brother Lance.
Thank you very much.
All right, you are dismissed. We'll see you in the next service.